Welcome to the Horror Kingdom! Have no clue what that was. That's not my normal intro. If you ever watch my videos, I just wanted to do something surprisingly fun, and that was not it. But today we are doing a list of the best 80s and 70s horror movies. I should have done that opposite, 70s and 80s. But you know what I'm saying. These are great horror movies. A lot of these are anyway. Some of them, not so much. And I'm going to talk about the ones that I don't think belong in the classic status. Now, as you can see, I like to break things down in categories. So we have the killer classics, which means pretty much like the highest I could give a horror movie. It's some of my favorite movies of all time. Murder spree usually means a really good time with a couple little tiny flaws. A bloody good time means pretty good, but, you know, it's got some major flaws. Just a paper cut means that it's not the worst thing ever, but really it's either heavily flawed or just really dumb, but somewhat entertaining. And then some weak-ass shit is exactly that, some weak-ass shit. But we're also going to use that category for ones I haven't seen, because I haven't seen every single horror movie on this list, because this list is on Tier Maker, and I don't make this list, so there's that. Alright, we're going to start our list with Gremlins. Now, Gremlins is that rare movie that has, like, kind of mixing genres. Like, it feels like a family movie at times. It feels like a coming-of-age movie. It feels like a comedy, and then it has horror moments all splendid into one movie. And on this list, there's maybe only like 2 or 3 other movies I could say would kind of fit into that category of like mixing family with horror. There's not a lot of horror movies that do that. And that's a shame, because I think that the younger generation should experience horror and enjoy it, but also adults can get a kick out of it. And I think Gremlins is one of the best versions of that. And I also really think that the Gremlins are nasty little fuckers and disgusting. So that's a plus to me as well. So overall, is Gremlins a classic? Almost. I don't think of it as like a movie I have to watch every year, but it is a movie where if someone says, do you want to watch it? I'm like, yeah, I haven't seen it in a while. Sure. I think it's a good, damn good time. I think it's has overall a good story and good acting for what it's going for, and I think the designs are great. So I'm going to put it in Murder Spree. I don't think it's quite in the classic, but I do think it's definitely worth watching. So Pet Sematary, this is a really hard one for me, because this happens whenever I read a book and then I watch the movie. In this case, I watched the movie when I was a kid, read the book about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and then I watched it again. And obviously, the book is much better. I mean, there's no going around it. I'd say that's every Stephen King anything, pretty much. Saying that, I still think this movie is solid. I think it's surprisingly emotional at moments, and I think it captures that feel, the family emotion, well enough. The book dives way deeper into death and how we look at it, and as someone who also has trouble dealing with death and understanding it completely, I really appreciate the book. As far as the movie, it's good, but also it has some really bad acting. It does. Like, don't get mad at me, it does. Just the overall pacing is odd. It's not as bad as the remake, which I also enjoyed, but I have problems with the pacing of that movie. This one also has pacing issues where it speeds through some of the more emotionally charged scenes for me to get to the scary part. And I also thought the ending was tame. Even as a kid, I was like, this isn't as scary as I was hoping. In the book, it's fucking terrifying, by the way. If you haven't read the book, please do. It's one of my favorite books of all time. But saying that, I still think it's a bloody good time. I think it's heavily flawed in the pacing and acting area, but everything else was very enjoyable. So we're going to put Pet Sematary in, well, a bloody good time. All right, so Child's Play. Funny enough, Child's Play is not my favorite in this franchise, but if we're going to talk about the first Child's Play, which we are, it's good. It's really good, actually. I think it's one of those movies that uses its small budget effectively on top of having a really fun main killer, Chucky. In an era where horror icons were still huge, and you had Jason and Freddy and Michael Myers, to input a new horror icon is hard. And while Chucky might not be on those levels, I still think he's still a little scary, because he's something more realistic. You know, Jason's basically a fucking unkillable zombie at this point. Freddy is in your nightmares, and Michael Myers is, again, like just the essence of evil. Whereas Chucky is a little doll. And I don't know about you guys, but I fucking hate dolls. I do. I hate them. Like when I go and see them, I just want to burn them all. But yeah, overall, I think this movie is very dark. It has a different feel than the future Child's Plays. I think Child Play 1 and 2 are the only ones that feel kind of similar to each other. Some kind of go back and try to harken back, but I think these two really just feel kind of that gritty dirtiness while having slight comedy with Chucky's over-the-top violence, and his just the way he talks to people is funny. But overall, I think it's more effective as a horror movie than some of the future installments. And yeah, overall, I really do like Child's Play, but I don't think it's a classic because it does feel low budget. It does feel like it's missing the kills. I think there's only one really good kill in here for me. And I think that there's better movies in this franchise that I would put higher. So I'm going to put it in Murder Spree. And I think I'm going to put it behind Gremlins because I think Gremlins is a little bit more iconic for me. I don't know what this is. I can't read that. Phenomena? I can't read that. I'm sorry. It's so tiny on my screen. But I haven't seen that. It's not weak as shit. I just haven't seen it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, probably one of the greatest horror movies of all time. It's not my top 10 horror movies, but it is in like my top probably 25 realm. And the reason why is because I think it has some of the best atmosphere in any horror movie. It is probably one of the dirtiest movies watching. And I don't mean like violence and sex. I just mean I feel dirty watching it. It feels icky. When they're going through the house and investigating and looking through it, it just feels disturbing. And that's realistic. And I think that's why it kind of triggers me, is that it feels like this could happen more than a lot of other horror movies. And yeah, overall, the ending, I'd say the beginning's a little hard to get through and the acting's a little off, but once you're into it, and once you get into the story, you're like, wow, this is pretty fucked up. And the last 25 minutes of this movie is, nasty and brutal. This movie has some of the most brutal, normal kills ever. Like, not over the top, not ripping people in half. It just has long or fast, quick kills. It's brutal. So I think it deserves to be in the classic genre or area. It's not my favorite. I'll have higher ones in this, but it's definitely like low killer classic for me. Talking about a classic, Nightmare on Elm Street. Now this to me is one of the greatest horror movies of all time. It is top 10 in my opinion. So obviously it's going to killer classic. I don't really have to talk too much about this because pretty much everybody watching this, I would assume, has seen Nightmare on Elm Street. If you haven't, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street is really just a fun, scary, beautifully shot, and just disturbing movie because it's something that you really can't fight against. It's in your dreams, and there's rules, and they make it clear how to defeat Freddy, which is great, but it's still horrifying to think this guy comes into your most vulnerable time, sleeping, getting away from life, and he comes in and be like, no, 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 and he can kill you. Also, the design of Freddy is wonderful. Overall, this is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And yeah, it's definitely a classic, and it is above the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. All right, so we have Carrie. Now, this is another one where I watched it when I was young. I enjoyed it. I read the book, loved it. It's, again, one of my favorite books of all time. And I watched it again, and of course, didn't feel like it lived up to it. The remake, I actually liked a little bit more for different reasons, but overall, they both are flawed for me watching them again. And the reason why is because the book is so good. I think it's missing to me, the thing that's missing from both these movies is that it doesn't have the overall world building and feel of Carrie affecting that neighborhood in total. Just the ending, and that's it. Other than that, it's mostly her solo story. And while that is in the book, you just have this whole feeling that this neighborhood is knowing who Carrie is as it slowly progresses. The news reports, the journals, like all that added to me, for me. But overall, Carrie is still a good movie. It's still a bloody good time. I think the acting can be a little spotty at times. I watched it last year. I was like, But I think that's more of a 70's, 80's thing, you know, where the acting is kind of iffy on horror movies. But yeah, the ending, I say the last 20 minutes, it still holds up as really, really damn good. Do yourself a favor, just like Pet Sematary, if you like these movies, like Pet Sematary and Carrie, please read the books because they are phenomenal. But yeah, I'm going to put that here. And I'm going to actually put Pet Sematary higher because I think I actually felt emotional when watching this at points, whereas Carrie, I never did. But yeah, they're both a bloody good time for sure. Children of the Corn, another one. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I think it's actually not that great. I think the idea of it's great. I think, again, The book is great, or the short story, whatever it was. But it's the acting is just, oh my god. I'd say this is probably the worst acting of this whole list so far. And there's some horrible parts. Now, I will say it does build up the tension well. I think the opening of this movie is great, and the ending is just bad. But there's some great stuff in between, and it keeps a good tension going. But overall, I don't like this movie that much. I think it's kind of boring at a lot of points, which kind of sucks. So yeah, for me, Children of the Corn is definitely just a paper cut. It's a high paper cut, but it's just a paper cut. I think it's very heavily flawed, and I think the source material is so much better that you don't even have to watch this, to be honest. Creepshow. Creepshow is really good. You know, again, some of the acting is really iffy here. I guess that's going to be my big harping point for a lot of these movies. But, yeah, Creepshow is an anthology, so some are better than others. And in being so, there's some good times, some bad times. I think Creepshow 2 is actually better. And I think it's more fun. I think Creepshow 1 is just kind of a little bit plain, in my opinion. So overall, I'm just going to put that in just a paper cut for me. Probably, though, above Children of the Corn. Amityville Horror, I was never really a big fan of. I actually was more freaked out as a kid. Amityville Horror Part 2, The Possession, or something like that. That movie fucked me up because it was just a little bit more realistic. Amityville and then the terrible remake. Both of them never really did much for me. Like, I like Spirit and Possession and all that, but for some reason, Amityville just never worked for me 100%. I don't think it's like a terrible movie or anything. This is like one of the least classic, people consider this classic horror movie that I ever come back to. Yeah, overall, it's just kind of right where these guys are, where it's like, if I have to watch them again, I will. I don't think they're the worst thing ever, but I have no intention of wanting to watch them again. I don't know what the fuck a Bay of Blood is, but that's some fucked up cover right there. Phantom the Opera, right? Or Phantom, or whatever. I've never actually seen any of these. I've heard good things, though. I probably should get on that, but yeah, I haven't seen them. Alright, so Evil Dead, I mean, Evil Dead 2 is better. Evil Dead 2 is pretty much the remake of Evil Dead, so you know, it's a better movie. But Evil Dead's not a bad movie. I think it's creepy. I think it has some really cool effects for the time, but it's extremely low budget. But I think if you're into horror, I think if you could just kind of sit back and enjoy it, and you got Bruce Campbell, I mean, it's still a bloody good time. It's just a low budget bloody good time, and I think that matters, you know. So I think I'm gonna put that in a bloody good time. Probably, I'd actually probably say I'd watch it over Carrie. But I think Pet Semetary's emotional moments are a little bit, you know, no. Evil Dead's probably the highest of the bloody good time for me, because I still think it has a lot of heart. It started Sam Raimi and his career, really. And, you know, I think there's just better movies in this franchise by far. Alright, so Halloween. Halloween is, wow, a classic. I watch this pretty much once a year, sometimes more. I think this is one of the best crafted movies on here. Again, like I said, the acting sometimes iffy here and there, but overall, it's a pretty fucking effective horror movie. It's an effective horror movie because it feels so real. It feels like, you know, after this, they go into the spirits and him being the essence of evil, but in this, it's just a fucking serial killer hunting down this high school girl, and you know, it gives you the creeps, because this can happen. This does happen. And so that's why I enjoy this movie so much. Also, I think it has some of the simplest but brutal kills. And that one scene that always stuck with me is just the stabbing into the wall and just like looking at him, like, fucks me up every time. But yeah, I think Halloween's a very effective horror movie. It's one of the ones that kind of stimulated the horror genre and the slasher genre. There's another one on here that did it too, that I enjoyed almost as much. But yeah, Halloween is a killer classic. And I'm going to put it, this one's hard, definitely above Texas for me. But what's better, Halloween or Nightmare? I think I've seen Nightmare more because of it being more of a supernatural slasher. It's been more fun to rewatch. Oh god, these are top 10 for me. So it's hard to choose, but yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it like that. I might change it later in this, but I think Nightmare I would edge out just a little bit more of rewatching. Black Christmas. This is a movie I actually never seen as a child. I watched it 5 years ago with my wife, and I was kind of blown away. I really like this movie. It is creepy. It is effective. It is horrifying at times. Very similar vibes to Halloween, in my opinion, in terms of just creepy and nasty and could be real. There's phone calls in here that actually gave me chills. Yeah, I gotta say, Black Christmas really surprised me. Where other people probably wouldn't put this as high as me, or maybe they would, I don't know. Or a lot of people don't talk about it. I would say that, okay, yeah, so the beginning did kind of bore me a little bit, but once we get about 1/4 of the way in, I was pretty heavily invested to the end. Would I put it as a classic? It's hard. You know, I only seen it once since I watched it. I would watch it again, but yeah, I guess I don't know if I put it in classic, because all those horror movies I've seen so many times. So I'm going to put it in Murder Spree, but it's definitely the highest Murder Spree for me. I think it's very well crafted, very effective, and a great villain, per se. So check that one out if you haven't. Sleepaway Camp. You know, Sleepaway Camp has a big reputation for the ending, and it is a shocking ending and a great freeze frame for it. I do think, though, that the rest of the movie is actually pretty fun slasher. It's very campy. It's goofy as hell. You will laugh. I don't know if it was intentional. I assume it was, but I don't know if it was. Yeah, it's definitely dumb but fun. It's, to me, like a really high, bloody good time. I'd probably put that right below Evil Dead for me. In terms of, like, watching it again, I would watch that again. Suspiria, holy shit, how did I fucking graduate? I didn't. Suspiria is good. I think it's one of those movies I just don't vibe with like other people do. I know they remade it. I haven't watched the remake, but I saw this only once. Oh god, I keep clicking that, I'm sorry. That was pretty much all I wanted to watch it. Just once. It just didn't work for me. It didn't get me invested. I don't know. It's fucking weird. There's another movie on here that's similar in vibes, like weird and over the top, and people love it. I like that one a little bit more. We'll get to it. But yeah, Suspiria just never did it for me. So I'm going to put it as Paper Cut. I probably put it like right here. Oh my god, I keep clicking that. I'm sorry. Alright, so Jaws. I mean, Jaws is fucking great. It's one of those movies that I have not read the book yet, and I really want to one day. But the movie is excellent. It's a slow build that fucking pays off. Like, see, that's my thing. I don't mind slow burn movies if they have a payoff that works. Some people don't have the patience for that, and I get it. I think Jaws does inject enough horror and sense of dread and movie scenes that will go, whoa, in it to keep you entertained. But for me, I think this movie is just wonderful. It's beautifully crafted. The shark is scary as fuck. It did start a genre, really. Well, there's a genre of shark movies, but they're not that great. But what it did do is make people scared of sharks, so that's pretty crazy. Yeah, overall, I really like Jaws. It's one of those classic horror movies. I don't think it's as scary as probably the top three, but I do think that I've seen it more than the Texas Chainsaw because it's that fucking entertaining. I also think it's a great acting piece. I think the acting is probably the best on this whole list, in my opinion. So yeah, Jaws, definitely high up there. I think as a horror movie, I like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street a little bit more, but Jaws is high up there as killer classic. What the fuck is that? Laguna Beach? Dawn of the Dead, I've never seen. The only zombie like movies in this series I've seen is Night of the Living Dead, the original, and then Dawn of the Dead remake in 2004. So I don't know if this one's any good. The remake is not that good. Outside those first 15 minutes are very effective, but everything else, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know this movie. I don't think I've seen it. Maybe when I was really young. So I'm just gonna put that over here. Yo, Last House on the Left is some fucked up shit. Thanks to this movie, we did get movies like Nightmare on Elm Street because it gave the budget for him to create these type of movies. I think my major beef with Last House on the Left, and some of the acting again is really bad, but also it feels extremely like like a porno. Is really what it feels like at times. I think it's a jarring total shift about the third of the way through, because you get the torture and rape scenes, and then the last third is pretty much payback to these fucking criminals by killing them. It's good. It's effective. I think it's lower budget, and it feels that this is probably one of the most movies you feel like it's low budget, you know? Yeah, I think it definitely has issues. Saying that, I do like it. I do like the remake. I think they're both solid B horror movies and a bloody good time. I would actually probably watch this over Carrie again, but that's probably it. Yo, The Brood. The fuck? Like from Marvel Comics? Haven't seen that one. Oh, Reanimator. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get why people like this movie that much. I just think it's okay. I don't like that genre that much, though. Like Frankenstein and all that. Like, that genre doesn't really appeal to me. But yeah, I think this movie's okay. I never really got it. Yeah, this is going to be my first some weak-ass shit, because I just don't like this movie that much. I don't know what that is. I'm going to put it here because I don't know what that is. Alright, The Thing. Excellent! I really like The Thing. You know, some would put it in classic. I don't think it's quite in the classic for me. I think The Thing with The Thing is that it is body horror, and that's where it excels at. Like, I think there's some of the best gross out fucking transformations I've ever seen. I think the plot is actually pretty good. I think the acting's pretty good. My thing is, though, it's not like one of those movies where I'm like, that's my go-to to watch. Let's go watch this. I think it just has kind of this long, overdrawn opening. Once we start getting into who's what and what's who, that's more interesting. But overall, I think that's still a really solid horror movie. If you like body horror, it's really good. It's definitely a murder spree. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's anything lower than that, but I just don't think it is quite as high as a classic for me. Saying that, where would I put it? Well, yeah, you know what? I'd probably put it right here. I think Black Christmas, to me, really surprised me, and I really enjoyed it. But The Thing is high up there in terms of, like, I'd watch it again. It's just not my most watchable, and besides the slow build in the beginning, I think it is effective, and the ending is always fun to judge what's really happening. Don't be afraid of the dark! Never seen it. Alright, Friday the 13th, baby. Is that the only one on here? Yeah, it is. Shit. Well, if this was Friday the 13th part 4 or part 6, it would be really high in a murder spree. But the first one is okay. You know, it's a B movie horror slasher flick. It has titties, so that's a plus. It does have a cool ending. That's a plus. And, yeah, overall, it's a good horror movie. I think it's one of the middle ground in the series for it. It's definitely not my favorite in the series by a long shot. But, yeah, overall, it's a bloody good time. I'd probably put it right here, right next to Pet Sematary and Last House on the Left. So, The Changeling is a movie I saw years ago. I think I watched this because people kept, I was saying, you know, I like Gremlins and I like Puppet Master, and people were like, oh, you haven't seen this, and you gotta watch it. I watched it. I was like, the fuck? I don't know. This movie just never really worked for me. Maybe I have to watch it again. Maybe I was in a bad mood. I don't know. But to me, this was some weak-ass shit. I did not really enjoy this movie that much. Alright, so next up is Hellraiser. Hellraiser is actually one of those movies I didn't watch as a kid. I watched it about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was actually really surprised how much it was a love story. I mean, yes, there's horror elements, obviously, some really good body horror, but overall it was a love story. And yeah, the ending turned completely horror, but yeah, this movie really surprised me how much I enjoyed it. I think the elements of having 2 leads is an interesting turn of events. I think that having one of your leads basically become the villain, or one of the villains, is great. Yeah, overall, I was really surprised how much I liked Hellraiser, because I just thought Hellraiser wouldn't click with me, because I just never had too much interest in it as a kid. And yeah, I was very, very pleasantly surprised with this one. Yeah, I'm going to put this in a murder spree. And, yeah, I'm going to put it behind the others because these I've all seen younger and enjoyed more. But Hellraiser is a real nice surprise for me. Don't know what the fuck From Beyond is. Alright, so we got The Exorcist. The scariest horror movie of all time. I'm just making that claim because it's true. For me. Not for everybody. Not for everybody, but for me. So listen, I was raised as like a Catholic and going to church every Sunday. And I was shown this movie when I was like 6 or 7. And it fucked me up. Like the next day I was like, oh, I'm going to get possessed by the fucking demon. And he's going to fucking make me spit out puke and stab my dick. But yeah, I was horrified of this movie as a kid, and then I watched it as I got older, still horrified, and I watched it again when I was with my wife for the first. She hadn't seen it, and it still freaked me out. I'm not religious at all now, and I think it's just really a very effective and creepy horror movie. I think the sound design is absolutely some of the best ever in movies. And the atmosphere, the coldness of this movie, as you walk through the room at the end, it feels fucking cold. I think this is one of the greatest horror movies of all time. I think it's the scariest horror movie of all time. And it is my top 3 horror movies of all time. Actually, you know what? I'll get to it in a second, my favorite horror movie of all time. But The Exorcist is my favorite scary horror movie of all time. And it's a classic. What the fuck is that? Hill House? Hill House? Like the TV show? I don't see this. Alright, so Aliens. This is my favorite movie of all time. This is the movie I've rewatched probably the most in my life. I think it's just one of those movies I can sit back and always watch again. I think the characters are beautifully done. I think the thing with Aliens 2 is that I absolutely loved Ripley's evolution in this. On top of the aliens, you get all the aliens this time, not just one alien. And they're still as horrifying. I mean, yes, they do get killed quicker, but you're also facing against trained military soldiers. In the first movie, they're just regular people, so it makes sense. And they know what these things are, so they have an idea of how to stop them. I also really enjoyed the Queen being introduced, just the mythos and the lore building up in this series. All of that really worked for me. Yeah, and I still think it has great horror moments. That moment when they have the little pad thing, it's like bloop, 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 and they're all like fucking swarming from everywhere. That's fucking scary. Yeah, I think this is a great movie. Fucking great movie. I think it's one of the greatest movies of all time. It is probably my favorite horror movie in this list. The Exorcist, the most scary, for sure. But Aliens is my favorite horror movie of all time. The Entity. I don't think I've seen that. Damn, I have a lot of I don't see it. I'm sorry, guys. I Spit on Your Grave. Kind of like The Last House on the Left. It is definitely feels like a little bit of a porno at times. And I'm not saying this because there's a sex scene. This is rape in both of these movies. So I'm not saying that. The feel of the movie feels low budget like a porno from the 70s or 80s. That's what I'm saying. Saying that, I do think it's effective revenge killing story. Similar to Last House on the Left, but it's when their parents get revenge for raping the daughter. This girl gets raped and pretty much left for dead and comes back and fucking mutilates these people. And it's definitely an effective revenge movie. I really did enjoy the second half of this movie. It is hard to watch the first half because it's a slow build towards the rape, and the rape is long. So it is a lot to watch and process. Saying that, I think it is a bloody good time. If you're into revenge flicks, this girl gets her revenge. They did a remake maybe like 15 years ago or 10 years ago. Not as effective in my opinion, but if you're not into the older movies, it is good enough that it has the same idea and feel. But yeah, Spit on Your Grave is a bloody good time. I'm going to put that right next to The Last House on the Left. I think that's where they belong, these two. Alright, so everybody's always going to have a movie that is just like against popular opinion. It's just like, how can you think that? And The Shining is that movie for me. I absolutely hate this movie. No, I don't hate it. I think it's just really, really I don't really get why people like this. Now, I enjoyed the book a lot more, And I think that I enjoyed it because it focused on the family. And in this, there is focus on the family and then shifts to more of Jack. Totally about Jack and really his descent. But the thing is that my biggest problem with this movie is that Jack... I don't know if his name's Jack. I'm saying Jack Nicholson. But sorry, it's been a while since I watched or read this. But it feels like Jack Nicholson's performance is basically a little crazy and then goes crazier. In the book, it's like just a normal guy living his life and trying to be better for his family, and an alcoholic, but his descent to madness feels real because it doesn't start that way. I didn't really feel that in the movie. I always felt something was off, and I don't know what about it didn't really click with me. I also think that the movies kill off a major character that I really enjoyed in the book. Yeah, some about this movie just didn't really register with me in terms of me enjoying it. I think there's some cool parts. Of course, the part with the bicycle is great, the blood in the elevator, but this is going to be one that people are probably going to be mad at me for. That's okay, because I feel like horror, it can be very divisive, and some people like movies, some don't. Shining, to me, is a movie I have really no interest of seeing again. I don't think it's some weak-ass shit, but I do think it's a paper cut, and just like kind of all these movies, like I watched them, and I'm like, I don't really have to watch them again. Not that I wouldn't if someone's like, I have to see it, but I have no interest. Possession's the movie I was talking about. Very, very, very similar to Suspiria in terms of just like really over the top and creepy and fucked up. But I actually like Possession more. I saw this only very recently, maybe 8 months ago, 6 months ago. They actually put it out finally on Blu-ray. Wow, this movie was crazy. There's a scene. I think it's in the subway or at least a tunnel. Jesus Christ, if you... I don't want to tell you to go watch the scene because you need the context, but it's crazy. The acting's actually really good at points, too. The ending is brutal. This is a dark, dark movie. The only reason I don't think I put it higher than A Bloody Good Time is because I don't think I'll ever watch this again. But it is effective. I'll give it that. I'm going to put it in low Bloody Good Time because it's like a movie that I just don't ever want to see again, if it makes sense. But if you want to see something that's so different than pretty much anything on this list, check it out. Alright, so The Omen. The Omen, I'm not going to talk much about The Omen because I think it's overrated as hell. I don't think it's great. I think it is kind of fucking boring, to be honest. Yeah, I don't like The Omen. I just don't. I think it's a boring fucking movie. I don't get why people think this is that scary. I guess people say the same thing about The Exorcist, but I think The Exorcist is much better done, much better handled, scarier, and more effective, better acting, too. Omen, I'll put right next to The Shining. I just don't get it. I don't get it. The Fly is great. I'm not even going to lie. This is a murder spree right up there. I'm going to move a little quicker because I know you guys are like, God, this guy never shuts up. The Fly is really great. I'm going to put it in murder spree right behind Hellraiser because I only just saw it maybe like 5 years ago, and I saw it again about last year when my wife saw it, and still good, still really great. I think the love story actually feels real, which is a nice change of pace for most horror movies. My biggest flaw probably with this movie is that it feels very slow at points. But the ending is fucking crazy. The last 30 minutes of this movie is crazy. If you like sci-fi, if you like a love story, you like body horror, this is one that you should really check out. This is a murder spree movie. Hills Have Eyes, the original, ugh. Fuck, this movie's disturbing to watch. The remake's actually really good, too, and probably even more sinister-ish in terms of, like, just the overall grittiness of it. But yeah, overall, it's a good movie. It's a bloody good time. I probably put it right in between Friday the 13th, I Spit on Your Grave, as I think it's essential for horror fans to see it in terms of if you like slashers and you just like hillbillies being fucking deformed and nasty and killing people and raping and shit. That's kind of what this movie really is. But yeah, it's a weird one. I'll say that in terms of you just got to see it. But I think the remake is better. Yo, what the fuck? Fungally Terror? I don't know what that is. Poltergeist is pretty good. This is the other family horror movie, I guess you could say. I mean, it's pretty disturbing at points, but I think it does have that family essence where like a younger, like maybe 12 years old, 13 can watch this without being too scared. I do think there's some really creepy parts. I do think that there's some really funny parts. I do think it's a little boring though for the younger generation. I showed my niece when she was 13 or 14 and she was kind of bored, and when I was watching I was like, yeah, I can see where this could get a little boring. As an adult, I like the family drama and the slow sense of the dread of the house and the possessions and shit like that, but overall I think Poltergeist is really effective. I don't think it's a murder spree for me. I don't really always want to watch it, but I do think it's a nice bloody good time. It's right there with like Friday the 13th. It's like good, and I show people, but I don't think it's amazing. And the other final movie on the list, Alien, the first one, definitely a classic. These movies are the essential sci-fi horror, in my opinion. Alien and Aliens. Well, Aliens is more of an action-packed, crazy fucking fight for survival, some horror moments spliced in. Alien is a slow, creepy, and also very, very totally effective movie. Basically, if you're claustrophobic, just think that they... Oh, I gotta stop clicking that. Just think that they are on a fucking ship. There's nowhere to go. You're stuck on a ship in space. And you got this fucking alien killing people. And the introduction of the alien bursting out of the chest is... Oh, beautiful. I think also the fact that the movie has the slow beginning, the first 30 minutes or 25, 30 minutes is kind of just slow introduction to space and what they are and who they are and the people. And when they start getting killed, you actually feel for them because you kind of lived with them through this exploration and just kind of everyday life. And yeah, Ripley's an excellent character. The cat is wonderful, and the alien is extremely scary. I would not want to be on this fucking ship. So where do I put it? Well, it's in classic, but I'm going to put that in front of Texas, and I'm going to put it surprisingly right in front of Jaws. These two are really great. Now, slasher genre is my favorite horror genre of all time, so I think, you know, Halloween and Nightmare just kind of stick with me more. And Exorcist is still the scariest one, and Aliens is better than Alien for me. Saying that, Alien is still a fucking phenomenal movie and needs to be watched. It's right next to Jaws, which is another phenomenal movie that you have to watch if you haven't watched. So these two are actually really similar, where it has a slow build to the end of the reveal of the creatures, and then they just are all out scariest. And that's my list. Now, you know, there's a lot on here I guess I haven't seen. The only really two on my weak-ass shit that I've seen is Changeling and Reanimator. I just don't like those movies. But the rest I just haven't seen. And then Just a Paper Cut. Those are movies, like I said, I don't think are awful. They're just movies that don't vibe with me. Like, it's like I've seen them, and I have really no interest of seeing them again if I just don't have to. And that's kind of where all those movies belong. A Bloody Good Time are those type of movies I'll put on, I'll enjoy, but they're not my first picks. Murder Spree is something I will watch again. I enjoyed these movies. They surprised me how good they were. Or I think that they're movies that stuck with me in my childhood that I still will watch, but they're not quite classic, like Child's Play and Gremlins and The Thing. And then Killer Classic, as you can see. Those movies I will watch anytime, anywhere. You come over to my house, you say, hey, James, I would like to watch Halloween. I'd say, well, what the fuck are we waiting for? Put my 4K on right now. That's a little preview to what I want to do next, which is 90s horror movie. If you guys want to see a list of that, I would love to do that. I love Silence of the Lamb, so obviously that would be high up there. But if you do want to see a 90s or 2000s or 2010s list, let me know. This was something I wanted to do for a while, especially as it's Halloween month, October. I thought this was a good change of pace between all my comic stuff. Anyway, what about you guys? What's some of your favorite classic horror movies for your list? And then give me some that you would put in Just a Paper Cut or Weak Ass Shit where they didn't vibe with you. It could be the biggest horror movies. It could be Halloween. It could be Aliens where you're just like, doesn't vibe with me. I would love to see different opinions. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do what you always do. Like button. If you love this video, hit the subscribe because I got more videos just like this, though I do focus on more nerdy stuff like comics and things like that, but I do like to do these type of tier rankings a lot too. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'm going to shut up now because it's like a 35-minute video. I am so sorry, but I hope you enjoy.